goody? Today we got a different one, you know what I'm saying? Thomas Sowell. I know I probably messed up. I be messing up all the names. Whatever. It is what it is. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So we got an interesting one. Facts about slavery never mentioned in school. That's different. So, I mean, I know there's certain points that they didn't get to, and there's certain stuff they would never say, but they tell you what you want. We go.
Only like the expedition. You know about the expedition?
What?
The Lewis and Clark expedition?
Yeah. I mean that was the Pilgrims though, right?
I don't know.
That's slavery.
Oh. I don't. It's still social studies. It's still history. It's still history.
Alright, well, we're going to just go ahead and we're going to jump into the video. Like and subscribe, hit the post notification bell, you know what I'm saying? I'd appreciate you. Let's get it. I'm going to try not to pause it too much, y'all. I'm letting y'all know. They be tripping. They be like, hey, you pausing it too much.
The instrumental use of the history of slavery today also underlies the claim that slavery grew out of racism. For most of its long history, which includes most of the history of the human race, slavery was largely not the enslavement of racially different people, for the simple reason that only in recent centuries has either the technology or the wealth existed to go to another continent to get slaves and transport them en masse across an ocean. People were enslaved because they were vulnerable, not because of how they looked. The peoples of the Balkans were enslaved by fellow Europeans, as well as by the peoples of the Middle East, for at least 6 centuries before the first African was brought to the Western Hemisphere. Before the modern era, by and large, Europeans enslaved other Europeans, Asians enslaved other Asians, Africans enslaved other Africans, and the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere enslaved other indigenous peoples of the West.
Alright, I'm gonna pause it. I actually have heard this before. I'm not gonna lie, I've heard that, but not in school though. Like, because I mean, the thing is, like, I be into a lot of spiritual stuff, and I was reading into a lot. I was deep into like religion and all that. I'm just looking stuff up. You know how I am. I'm just looking up random stuff. And it was like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Before anybody else got enslaved, you know what I'm saying? We was enslaving ourselves. Like the blacks enslaved the blacks, which is true. The ones like the kings and queens of Egypt had like slaves, you know what I'm saying? They had people.
Yeah, but they said that they were enslaving the vulnerable.
Right. The weaker people are the ones that got enslaved. The vulnerable.
That's not right.
It's not good. You know what I'm saying? But if you look at it, that's just how society is. The weaker are always the ones more vulnerable. I'm bad with that word, but vulnerable.
Yeah, me too.
They always the ones that, you know what I'm saying, and that's what that stems from. So okay, let's jump back into it. And it's not just one race they talk about. The Europeans. He said the Europeans slaved. So let's see what he talking about. He talking about something.
Western Hemisphere. Slavery was not based on race, much less on theories about race. Only relatively late in history did enslavement across racial lines occur on such a scale as to promote an ideology of racism that outlasted the institution of slavery itself. Wherever a separate people were enslaved, they were disdained or despised, whether they were different by country, religion, caste, race, or tribe. In East Africa, the Maasai were feared slave raiders, and other African tribes, either alone or in conjunction with Arabs, enslaved their more vulnerable neighbors. As late as 1891, it was reported that Manyuema slavers had demoralized surrounding tribes, destroying crops, and famine reigned everywhere. Even in the early 20th century, Abyssinians were still raiding other Africans and carrying...
Hey, let me pause it. I didn't even mean to pause it again that quick. But let me just say this, because I had to say this because it's on my mind and he making me mad right now. Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, he right. That whole time, this happened before. They was all enslaving themselves, enslaving their neighbors, correct. But over time, it turned into something different. It wasn't just that.
It was like a tradition.
Right, and then when it became, when the blacks, the Africans got sold and taken over the water. You feel me? It became a whole different.
It got bigger.
It became a whole different situation. So what he's talking about, I'm not saying is irrelevant. I'm saying it's a different time. This is not irrelevant in the time of slavery we thinking about, where it was because of the color of your skin. It started out as something different, but it did evolve into something else. So we're not about to just do that. I'm sorry, my bad. I didn't even mean to go there. But I'm just saying, we're not doing that. He kind of struck a nerve. I'm just saying, like, bro, yeah, you're right. But at the same time, we're not going to negate the fact that this is true too. So we're going to jump back into it. I just had to say that. Let's jump back into it.
Off slaves. It was 1922 before the British had gained sufficient control in Tanganyika to stamp out slavery there. Arabs were the leading slave raiders in East Africa, ranging over an area larger than all of Europe. The total number of slaves exported from East Africa during the 19th century has been estimated to be at least 2 million. Ooh. The form in which the story of slavery has reached most people today has been along the lines of the best-selling book and widely watched television miniseries Roots by Alex Haley. Challenged on the historical accuracy of Roots, Haley said, "I tried to give my people a myth to live by." This instrumental use of history, or purported history, is open to the same objections as other instrumental myth-making. Despite the impression created by Roots, during the era of the massive slave trade from West Africa, a white man was more likely to catch malaria in Africa than to catch slaves himself. The average life expectancy of a white man in the interior of sub-Saharan Africa at that time was less than 1 year. By and large, men from Europe or the Western Hemisphere came to the coasts of Africa, bought their slaves, and left as soon as possible. Even so, the death rates among the white crews of the ships carrying slaves to the Western Hemisphere were as high as the death rates among the slaves themselves. It was only much later, after quinine and other medical measures enabled Europeans to survive where there were tropical diseases, was it possible for them to invade Africa in force and establish empires there. But by then, the Atlantic slave trade had already been ended.
Let me just say something. Let me just say something, because he hit a point and he got the ball rolling in my head, right? He said the Europeans couldn't even come to the forest and what it was in their tribes because they would die from diseases because they couldn't, like, basically, how do I put it? They couldn't take the atmosphere, or they couldn't live in that type of atmosphere from in the area that these guys was living. So y'all had to make medicine and all that just to come across to get the slaves. So it's not a thing. You just telling me it's not a thing. It's not a color thing. You know what I'm saying? It might not be. It might have not been. It wasn't. How do I say that? Wasn't.
Who is this person? Like the illustrator?
Is it not the Thomas guy?
How old is he? Like, was he there for all that? He should be dead if he was.
If it took all that, if you had to get medicine and all that just to get across the sea, just to be able to go there to get the slave, why not just leave it alone? Why not go? Why not keep the slave? If they had slaves anyway, they was apparently tired of enslaving their people and they needed slaves. I'm just saying. They needed other people to enslave. They couldn't do it to their people no more. Don't get me started. Let's go back into it.
During the era of that trade, Africa was largely ruled by Africans who established the conditions under which slave sales took place. The crew of a slave ship was in no position to defy African rulers and their armies by going out across the land and capturing people willy-nilly. The stronger African peoples captured and enslaved the weaker peoples. The same pattern found over the centuries in Europe, Asia, the Western Hemisphere, and Polynesia. In Nyasaland, the Ngoni and Yao swaggered over and terrorized other tribes. In Uganda, the Baganda made life miserable for their neighbors. And the Nyoro and Hima of Anko enslaved Toro women and children. The Tutsi dominated the Hutu in Rwanda. The Maasai lorded it over the Kikuyu and Kamba, and the latter, in turn, held the Indorobo in a kind of serfdom. It was precisely the fact that Europeans, except for the Portuguese, seldom participated in the raids that captured and enslaved Africans that enabled most people in Europe and the Americas to remain oblivious to the traumatic experience that this was, with some Africans committing suicide to avoid capture and wives being whipped as they tried to cling to their husbands or children. Historian David Breon Davis pointed out that Europeans had little contact with the actual process of enslavement, and that as late as 1721, the Royal African Company asked its agents to investigate the modes of enslavement in the interior. Europeans typically saw only the end results, enslaved people being offered for sale on the coast. It was much the same story in the Ottoman Empire, where those who bought slaves had no idea what these slaves had been through before. The unique position of the Western world in the history, and especially the destruction of slavery, need not imply that there was unanimity within the West on this institution. In addition to whites who defended the enslavement of Africans on racial grounds, or who opposed general emancipation on social grounds, there were many whites, and even blacks, who defended slavery as a matter of self-interest as slave owners. Although most black owners of slaves in the United States were only nominal owners of members of their own families, there were thousands of other blacks in the antebellum South who were commercial slave owners, just like their white counterparts. An estimated 1/3 of the free persons of color in New Orleans were slave owners, and thousands of these slave owners volunteered to fight for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Black slave owners were even more common in the Caribbean. In short, there were many defenders of slavery in the West, even in the 19th century. And outside the West, slavery was too widely accepted to require defense. No other nation ended slavery in the same way as the United States did, and few ended it after so short a struggle, as history is measured. How and why did slavery end in most of the world? There were two major processes. Over the centuries, as more and more territories around the world consolidated into nation-states with their own armies and navies, raiding those territories to capture and enslave the people who lived within them became more hazardous in itself, and also risked military retaliation against the countries from which the raiders came. Thus, more and more peoples became off-limits to slave raiders over time. Put differently, the areas which remained subject to slave raiding over the centuries were primarily those where the people lived in smaller or weaker societies. Such societies continued to exist where it was difficult, for geographic or other reasons, to consolidate large areas under one government. This was true of the Balkans, the backwaters of Asia, and much of sub-Saharan Africa. By the early modern era, sub-Saharan Africa, with its numerous and severe geographic handicaps, was one of the last remaining areas from which vast numbers of people could be enslaved.
That's what it looked like.
Not being racist. I'm just surprised.
I got a couple of comments, and I waited till after the video to say what I had to say. But you said you didn't think he was black? You surprised at that?
Yeah, I thought he was white.
Yeah.
I thought he was a Caucasian. Let me say that.
The thing I gotta speak on is the beginning part of the video, not really per se the end of the video. He was saying how everybody do it. He was making a point that everybody did it at the beginning, and that's how it really started out. Cool. Okay, I have that understanding. But he never got to the point of how there were certain people that were targeted. And he was trying to get to the point that it wasn't a targeted thing for certain people, you know, like certain races. That I feel like that's why he messed up with me. Like, a lot of the stuff I agree with, but that's why he messed up with me, and let me get to it. Let's talk about blacks. We're going to start with blacks because that's the most notable.
African American.
That's the most notable, and that's the one that's still going on. Because after they were given from the blacks, because they were enslaved by the blacks to the whites, you feel me? After that, it got even crazier. It turned into something totally different, a totally different monster. But let me not stop there. We're not even going Holocaust. The Jews. Okay. And then I heard something about the Chinese too. But I never really looked into it that much, so I don't have too much to speak on it. But I heard that was targeted. The Jews were hated because of who they were. The blacks were hated because who they were. And people in our community still have to fight this till this day. So you gonna sit here and tell me this wasn't a, you know what I'm saying? This wasn't like a targeted thing. Like, it wasn't just about the color. Yes, it didn't start out as that. But you're not about to manipulate me and tell me that it wasn't never that. Or at some point in time that these certain group of people wasn't targeted. Nah, you got me.
You can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what he thought he was gonna get out of this video, but confrontation or debate.
He did, yeah. But he educated me a little bit on some things. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, like the beginning I didn't know, but like towards the ending I kind of learned that in school.
Yeah, but it's hard. And yes, I didn't know that everybody was enslaving their own race. I know that certain people were doing it, so that's something I learned. But certain points he was trying to get to, that it was never... The only thing for me was that it was never a targeted thing. It was never any race being targeted. And that's not me. I never had to deal with it myself. But going through history, listening to it, and learning what you learn not only in school, but outside of school, when you look deeper into things, nah.
Yeah, because like in school, I just always thought it was us that was in slavery, like African Americans.
Right.
But like watching movies and stuff and reading stuff after school, I learned that it was all. So that was something I really...
Yeah, I mean, I only knew... I'm not gonna lie, I knew about the blacks. And then, like, in school, the only ones I knew about from school also was the Holocaust, the Jewish. Mm-hmm. That's the only ones I ever got from school, you know what I'm saying? And once you leave that, you learn that it was a lot of other, you know what I'm saying, a lot of other heritage places, not even close to where we at, that was doing that type of stuff, enslaving their own people, enslaving different people. So, but I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Make sure y'all liking and subscribing. We're gonna try to do more videos like this. This was a different one, so I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all subscribe to her channel.
Akila Mac.
Akila Mac. You know what I'm saying?
Hold on, I still never heard about Roots.
Roots.
That's what I was looking up.
It's a movie, I think, or a TV show. I mean, it's one we probably had to watch because I heard about it a lot. Bro, that's one of the ones everybody watched. That's one of the ones that people not gonna be able to believe you didn't see. That's like Boys in the Hood.
That's like The Color Purple.
It's like one of them that you never watch Roots. That's so we gonna have to check that out. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But make sure y'all like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. Give us any suggestion in the comments of a video that y'all want us to do a reaction to next. I appreciate you. We out your dick.